Remember how you and Wallow were crying? You and Wallow were crying. Oh, my son. Oh, my son got killed. Oh, you were crying. Now you talking about snitching. You goddamn right I'm a law-abiding citizen.
I got family. I got willing to risk their lives and freedom to die by me and mine. You hear me? Why don't play with me, man? So
you ain't even going to jail again. He ain't grew up tough like his daddy.
Up your ass, you'll floss your teeth with my shoelaces, nigga. Play with me, bro. Don't play with me, bro. Don't play with mine, bro. Don't play with mine. Just don't play with mine.
Charleston White made a whole career out of shock value and pure disrespect. But this time, he aimed at the wrong target. T.I.'s son, King Harris. 4 years. Charleston's been running his mouth, clowning King at every chance, trying to turn him into a punchline. He even crossed the line with threats that dragged Trayvon Martin's name into the mix. And that's when the internet snapped. Everybody knew he went too far. Because once you bring a man's child into your act, that's a line you can't ever walk back. That's when T.I. stepped in. Not as a rapper, not as an entertainer, but as a father ready to defend his blood. And his warning to Charleston?
About my son, what some grown man had to say about my son, man. Cause somebody please, just pull me up to speed, man. Just pull me up to speed. How some grown man had some to say about my son. Just pull me up to speed on that, man. Just pull me up to speed on that, man. What fuck ass grown is wasted his whole life doing absolutely nothing. Got something to say about my son at the beginning of his adult.
Loud, clear, and impossible to miss. King Harris may just be stepping into adulthood, but there are some boundaries you do not cross, and T.I. made sure the world knew it. Charleston thought he was running just another rant, brushing King off as a nobody and clowning like it was business as usual. But this time, he miscalculated. What he expected to be the same old clicks and cheap headlines turned into the breaking point. Because let's keep it real, this wasn't trolling anymore. This was flat-out envy. Saying, I'm a nobody, your son's a nobody told the whole story. People close to the situation started pointing out the obvious. Charleston's bitterness comes from watching a young man pull respect and attention he could never touch. Not even in his so-called prime. At 48, with cases stacking up and his platform fading fast, he's throwing shade at King's natural shine. And now, the same man who once bragged about never being scared to speak his mind is allegedly too spooked to even lob back online. That's when T.I. cut straight to the truth. No sugarcoating, no hesitation.
Gang, I got family. I got who willing to risk their lives and freedom to die by me and mine. You hear me? Why don't play with me, man? Don't play with my.
He said Charleston White is so miserable in his own skin that he attacks children just to stay relevant. A father's words, loaded with fire, and this time the streets listened. Charleston's act finally hit a wall, and it's a wall built out of family, respect, and the one line you never cross. Imagine that, a grown man pushing 50, waking up every day with no mission except trying to tear down young men with a future. T.I. called out the hypocrisy with no filter. At just 20, King Harris already has respect, opportunities, and people rooting for him. Meanwhile, Charleston's biggest flex is stirring up mess and then crying online when it backfires. That's a reality check nobody could dodge. Put my foot so far up your ass, you'll floss with my shoestrings. Don't play with me, bro, don't play. And Tip wasn't done. He torched Charleston's so-called legacy, dragging out every embarrassing receipt. The same guy who snitched on his own crew, got locked up for pepper spraying cats, and even got beat at comedy shows before running to the police. That ain't toughness, that's a circus act. Now he's whining about King Harris, when deep down he knows King embodies everything he'll never be, young, talented, loved, and backed by family that truly rides for him. T.I. cut cold. Don't play with me, bro, don't. Charleston's act has always been desperation masked as confidence. His rise in 2023 fizzled quick, and now his name's tied more to mugshots than comedy clips. In October 2024, he was booked in Tarrant County on animal cruelty and aggravated assault. The animal cruelty charge turned heads. Reports said he pepper-sprayed a cat. Suddenly, the shocked jester looked like something darker, with officials holding him without bond in the LON Evans Correction Center. And just a few months later, February 2025, Charleston was back in handcuff on another aggravated assault. He slipped out days later claiming the charges were dropped, but the pattern is loud: repeat offenses, reckless stunts, no growth. While Charleston keeps adding to his rap sheet, T.I. made it clear nobody is using his son for clout. Sources say he's ready to do whatever it takes to protect King and silence leeches like Charleston, no matter the cost. Look closer at Charleston's history, and the picture makes sense. Born in Fort Worth in 1977, his life was soaked in violence early. At 14, he was tied to a robbery that ended in a man's death, earning 7 years in juvenile lockup. Behind bars, tragedy hit again. He lost his right eye in an accident. Growing up fatherless only added to the rage, leaving him broken and bitter. So when he popped onto social media, it wasn't talent or advocacy, it was pure shock value. He threw dirt on the names of legends like DMX, even George Floyd, just to grab clicks. That became his whole blueprint: disrespect for attention. But now the act is catching up. From snitching on his friends as a teen, to arrests, to humiliations on stage, Charleston's hypocrisy is impossible to ignore. A man whose entire story is betrayal, and courtroom drama really thinks he can judge King Harris? The streets see through it, and now they're watching to see how long Charleston can outrun the fallout. He didn't build a platform. He bullied his way into one. That's why his attacks on young men like King Harris cut so deep. They are not random. They are calculated. Charleston's whole playbook is built around targeting young black men with real potential, especially those raised with a kind of strong family backing he never had. He's admitted to growing up feeling unwanted and unloved, and now he projected emptiness onto every kid who's got the respect, stability, and love he was denied. So when he saw King Harris stepping into adulthood with opportunity and support all around him, it ate at him. That's why no matter how many times he says it's just content, he can't leave King alone. This isn't comedy. This isn't mentorship. It's obsession. A man stuck in bitterness, locked out of real relevance.
Man, who did what, who, man, we was about to whoop when you come back down here from telling. Yo, I can see you had
And clinging to drama is the only way left to get noticed. By late 2022, Charleston was already running on fumes. His entire brand of chaos was starting to fade, and desperation made him hunt for a bigger target. That's when he crossed the line and went after Tip's family. On October 8, 2022, he unloaded one of his signature rants. Not just on King, but on Boosie Badass's son, Tyrone, too. Both young men had just faced legal trouble, and Charleston pounced like a vulture circling fresh prey. But instead of offering guidance, the way he always pretends he does, he went straight for the jugular. He mocked King's looks, laughed about his arrest, and even predicted his downfall. That wasn't keeping it real. That was bullying, plain and simple. And the world saw it for what it was: a bitter man tearing down kids who represented everything he could never be. This time, though, he picked the wrong family, because King Harris wasn't built to stay silent. On October 9th, just a day later, he went live and clapped back with fire. He called Charleston exactly what the streets had been whispering: a snitch and a coward hiding behind shock value. But what made the moment even heavier was King's composure. At just 18, he dragged Charleston's shady past into the light and exposed him as a man who bragged about cooperating with law enforcement. A teenager made a so-called OG fold in front of the internet, and that humiliation cut deeper than any insult ever could. Charleston's tough guy mask shattered because he couldn't stand being outclassed by a kid. But instead of backing off, he spiraled further. On October 10th, he crossed a line no one expected, dragging Trayvon Martin's name into the mess and even invoking George Zimmerman. That wasn't trolling anymore. That was a dangerous man weaponizing racial trauma to come after a rapper's son. Fans were outraged. They said Charleston had finally gone too far, using tragedy as a prop to threaten a teenager. And instead of pulling back, he pushed harder, bragging that he reached out to Atlanta police and Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis to get King arrested. For someone who claims to help the youth, his eagerness to throw a black teenager into the system exposed his hypocrisy once and for all. By then, T's patience was gone. On October 10th, he fired back with raw emotion, making it clear Charleston had crossed a line he could never walk back from. This wasn't about rap, clout, or internet games anymore. This was a father in warrior mode, ready to defend his son at all costs. T.I. called it plain. Charleston was talentless, bitter, and desperate, a man who could only stir up dust and pray for someone else's downfall. And just like that, what started as a rant turned into a full-blown war. T.I., who had been focused on building his comedy career and business empire, shifted gears overnight. Because once Charleston made it personal with King, Tip wasn't going to let it slide. This wasn't an entertainer clapping back at a troll. This was a father ready to handle business the old-school way. Tip made it clear he'd risk his freedom, his reputation, and everything is built if it meant standing up for his son. That's the difference between these two men. T.I. has everything to lose, while Charleston has nothing left but a loud mouth. The contrast couldn't be clearer. One man fighting for family, the other lashing out because he doesn't have one. After the threats, there was even a phone call on October 10th meant to squash the beef. But Charleston being Charleston, he couldn't handle peace. Instead of cooling off, he walked away bragging the call didn't work, spinning it into more drama. Then came the most ridiculous stunt yet. He challenged Tip to a celebrity boxing match, demanded Steve Harvey as referee, and even mocked T's injury by suggesting he wear an eye patch. Pure circus behavior. Think about it. A grown man threatens a teenager, then flips it into a pay-per-view boxing match for clout. That move exposed Charleston's entire mindset. To him, it was entertainment. To T.I., it was survival, protecting his child. And when the backlash kept growing, Charleston fell back on his oldest trick, accusing Tip of being a federal informant over that Crime Stoppers campaign in 2007. But the hypocrisy was deafening. This was the same Charleston White who bragged about cooperating with police and even testified against his own co-defendants. Him clowning Tip for doing community safety ad was pure projection. Everything he threw at T.I. was really a reflection of himself. And the more he pushed that Crime Stoppers angle, the more desperate he looked. By November 2022, T.I. answered the way only a boss could, through music. He jumped on Juicy Fruit's track step and slid in bars clearly aimed at Charleston. Without ever getting messy, Tip dismantled Charleston's credibility while showing he could handle the feud with artistry and class. Fans knew immediately it was a statement. But instead of catching the message, Charleston embarrassed himself again. In one of the wildest twists, he actually praised the DISS and begged to be on the remix. That's how thirsty he was for relevance. Being dissed by a superstar felt like a win just because it meant someone important acknowledged him. It was pathetic, a man so hungry for attention that even humiliation became fuel. And that's a dangerous cycle Charleston thrives on. Every time people try to shut him down, he flips it into content. Every clapback, every insult, every attack becomes oxygen for his fading platform. That's why he circles back to King Harris again and again. Whenever King hits a rough patch or makes headlines, Charleston swoops in like a vulture, mocking him just to stay relevant. It's toxic, predictable, and rooted in cruelty. And that's the ugly truth. Charleston doesn't mentor. He hunts. He zeroes in on the sons of successful rappers because they embody everything his broken life never gave him. He's admitted himself he grew up unloved and rejected, and those scars still fuel his bitterness. Watching T.I. guide his kid with love and stability burns him up inside. King represents everything he missed: family, opportunity, and a future he can't touch. Instead of healing, Charleston projects his misery outward, dragging others into the same darkness he lives in. That's why this feud spiraled so wildly. Threatening a child and then trying to turn it into a boxing event showed just how warped his sense of boundaries is. To him, everything is content, even a teenager's safety. Meanwhile, T.I. moved with the opposite energy, responding as a father protecting his legacy. And the people noticed. While Charleston milked the feud for clout and clicks, T.I. treated it like life or death. That's why the streets rallied behind Tip. Real fatherhood gets respect. Clout chasing dress up as truth does not. And the more Charleston reinvented his attacks, mocking appearances one week, screaming informant the next, the more obvious it became. He wasn't fearless. He was desperate. Charleston's entire career had become a carousel of nonsense. One wild claim after another, just to keep his name buzzing. But the mask has slipped too many times. At this point, everybody can see the truth. Charleston White isn't a truth teller or a mentor. He's a bitter man running out of relevance, clinging to hate because without it, he's nothing. Even the folks who once cheered Charleston on now shake their heads every time he crosses lines no entertainer should ever touch. Those Trayvon Martin comments were the breaking point, proof he doesn't have boundaries. And once you go that far, there's no coming back. That's why his online presence feels so shaky now. People don't watch his live for wisdom. They tune in expecting the next meltdown, the next reckless rant that pushes him deeper into a corner. Meanwhile, King Harris hasn't folded once. The young man keeps moving forward, carving his own lane despite the non-stop shots thrown his way. His 2022 clapback wasn't just defense, it was a declaration. King showed poise, maturity, and restraint, refusing to stoop to Charleston's level. That contrast exposed Charleston even more. A teenager handling pressure with grace while a grown man unravels in public. The picture couldn't be clearer. King has family, opportunity, and a future waiting for him. Charleston, all he's got is controversy, mug shots, and regret. And the irony stings because Charleston loves to call himself an activist, a mentor, someone for the youth. But how can you claim mentorship when your actions scream the opposite? How can you guide kids when you attack them publicly, try to get them locked up, and even throw threats at their lives? That's not mentorship. That's contradiction. His past makes a pattern obvious. Violence, arrests, animal cruelty charges, constant run-ins with the law. Charleston hasn't grown beyond his own chaos. His Monetized it. He chose to package dysfunction as entertainment. And now, with the world watching him spiral, the truth is clear. His story isn't about leadership. It's about wasted potential. A man who had the chance to change but chose clout over healing. This feud exposed two completely different realities. On one side, T.I., a father, a protector, a man willing to risk it all for his child. On the other, Charleston White, a provocateur so desperate for relevance that he drags kids into his storm. The contrast couldn't be sharper. That's why people rally behind Tip. You don't even need to be a fan to get it. At the heart of this drama sits one universal truth. Family comes first. Charleston thought he could turn his attacks on King into another viral moment. But instead, he exposed how fragile his platform really is. T's warning rang out crystal clear. Play with my child and there will be consequences. That's a message every parent understands. Because no matter how rich, how famous, or how streetwise you are, when someone comes to your family, all bets are off. Charleston learned that lesson the hard way. The scars of this feud will follow him longer than any viral rant or desperate stunt. Because at the end of the day, Charleston's story is that of a man who had chances to grow but chose chaos instead. T's story is one of a father standing tall, refusing to let jealousy or bitterness touch his bloodline. And King Harris's story, that one is just beginning, defined by resilience, maturity, and the kind of strength that proves is ready for the spotlight no matter how many trolls try to dim it. If you rocked with this breakdown, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And don't go anywhere. The next video on your screen is packed with even more shocking celebrity drama you don't want to miss. See you in the next one.